Mexico's most dangerous drug cartel now using artificial intelligence to expand its criminal empire. According to a report by Interpol, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel is using AI to commit financial crimes and increase human trafficking. The cartels are using these technologies to pull off more sophisticated fraud campaigns through using AI, large language models, and cryptocurrencies. We know hundreds of victims allegedly have been trafficked after being lured through messaging apps and social media and then forced by the cartel to commit fraud. And this isn't just happening in Mexico. The report also shows how European, Asian, and African organized crime groups are also embracing AI. Let's bring back in Tracy Walder now, NewsNation national security analyst and former CIA officer and FBI special agent. Tracy, thanks so much for staying with us.
Thank you, Natasha.
So, Tracy, this seems to be AI being used to aid in human trafficking in a so-called pig butchering scheme. What is pig butchering?
Obviously, the name is awful, for lack of a better word. But in a scheme like this, the victim is known as the pig. And so the way that this really starts out, particularly in regards to cryptocurrency, is that a person randomly reaches out to them on social media, WhatsApp, those kinds of things, under the auspices that, oh, whoops, I accidentally contacted you. But then they almost begin sort of a relationship and establish trust. And from that, they exchange pictures, notes, those kinds of things. And that's called fattening up the pig or fattening up the victim. After that, that's kind of when they go in for the kill, if you will, and ask them to invest in these schemes. But they don't know them as schemes. They think that they're real investments. And really, once all of their money is drained, the person butchers them or cuts off contact with them indefinitely.
Okay, I appreciate you explaining that. It's really interesting to see how AI may be playing a role in expanding human trafficking. Certainly in my mind, when I hear human trafficking, I think about sex, especially in regards to cartels. That is not what we're talking about here. It seems like where AI is playing a role is making these schemes so seamless. The language is right, the communication is flawless, that people are being lured into what they think are legitimate jobs and then being forced by the cartel to work in a call center and scam other people in financial fraud, romance scams. What can you tell us about this? Is this a new growing area that investigators are aware of?
I think that's the problem, is that it is new. And the reality is since about 2021, these kinds of schemes have increased by 183%. And the FBI has just now started issuing warnings about them. And so I do think that this is kind of this relatively new, road less traveled thing, if you will. And that is problematic because we are playing this game of catch up. And so when you have the AI tied to this cryptocurrency and you have individuals that are not doing these things originally under nefarious purposes, that is really a recipe for disaster.
It's really interesting. I think a lot of us are used to getting these random text messages on our phones now saying like, hey, do you remember me? Or hey, how are you doing? And they're trying to lure you into this dialogue, the whole big pig butchering scheme that we were talking about just a moment ago. Before, there used to be typos, strange parts of communication that clearly make it sound like it's not English as a first language situation. With AI now, it's really, really hard to tell. What do people need to do to protect themselves from this?
You know, I think the reality is, and people a lot of times get on me about this, but you can never be too skeptical. So, it was funny, just as I was preparing for this on my WhatsApp, I got two kind of random text messages from people that I didn't know. And the reality is, the best thing that you can do is block that immediately, because if it is somebody who's genuinely trying to get in contact with you, they will find another way to do so. So if you get something like that, in my opinion, that is the most important thing to do. Also, if you do engage in a conversation with someone on an app and they try to move it to a secondary app, I think that's the time to realize that you may be taken kind of for a ride here. And I think it's really important to cut off that communication right away.
We hear about cartels, the Jalisco New Generation cartel being particularly brutal, particularly ruthless. What role do schemes like this, scams like this play in propelling them up, helping them build their power and control?
The interesting thing is you're absolutely right, Natasha. The Jalisco cartel is actually one of the most violent. This is the group that, sends body parts in briefcases to people. That's what they've been known for doing. And I actually think that this enables them to be less violent because it makes these drug transactions and these human trafficking transactions, to your point earlier, a lot more seamless, and they don't need to engage in this kind of barbaric violence. And that makes them a bit more difficult to track because you don't necessarily know that you have been a victim.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.